Staff? Yo, Kingpin,
Yes,
are you ready to begin?
let's knock them down.
All right, I call to order the meeting of the City of Davis Joint Unified School District 2x2 for this Wednesday, May 21st, 2025. Roll call. We have all four members of our committee present, as well as staff. Is there any public comment of comments not on this agenda? Okay. There is no public comment. So our first order of business is approval of minutes from April 2nd, 2025. Do we have any comments or questions about said minutes?
No question. I move approval.
All right.
I second.
Member Neville moved to approve. Committee member Moon seconded. We'll do a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstaining? All right, the minutes are approved. Okay, next on to the exciting city and district communications. And I believe the city went first last time, so let's have the district go first this time if we might.
Thank you. Just a couple dozen more sleeps until graduation season is upon us. I know Christina, Joe, and I all have seniors, so we'll be wishing them well in their next endeavors. I'm happy to see them all make it across the stage. My fingers are crossed for my own child.
As are mine.
So that's been the big thing. We're gearing up for graduation season. We are in the midst of hiring and budget planning for next year. We got sort of the education side of the May Revise, the governor's May Revise today from School Services of California. And so finalizing our sort of adoption budget, which will come in front of the board in the first draft on June 5th and then finalized on the 18th. So that's really the big work for us is wrapping up this year and doing the best we can to be prepared for the fall.
Okay, let's go from the city.
As far as the city is concerned, we are also knee-deep or neck-deep in budget. So introduced the budget to the council last night, so they had their first conversation on that, and we'll be working on that over the next couple of weeks with a goal certainly to approve the budget, have it in place by the end of June. I think our other interesting news or big news is tomorrow we have our first store opening in what is now called the Davis Collection, so previously known as the U-Mall. So Nordstrom Rack is opening, and we're excited to have that property starting to come back online. That'll help us out with our sales tax and locations to shop. The other items that I have are actually part of the agenda, so we'll talk about them in just a minute.
Okay. Any questions, comments from members of the committee? Seeing none, we'll move to item 5, which is our discussion items. And I believe the first one up, 5A, is safety. And I'm a rules follower. It shows 5AI being the district, so Superintendent Best.
Yeah, so a couple of things. I think we had a question from a council member about strategic fencing, or when that's going to be happening. We have 4 fencing contracts coming to the board on the 5th of June. And we expect work to begin on those sites shortly thereafter. Those are North Davis, Willett, Pioneer, Montgomery. We also had a very robust 3-part board discussion that concluded on the 15th, last Thursday, regarding door locking. The policy, board decided the policy will remain the same for this coming year. We are working on coordinated incident log, so making sure that we're tracking the variety of incidents that happen around our campuses, on and around our campuses, and then coordinating with Chief Henry to make sure that we're cataloging those in similar ways so that we can cross-reference and analyze safety-related incident data in a more thoughtful and deliberate way over time. Madam Trustees, anything you want to add to that?
Feel good.
Happy to take questions if you have them.
I do have a question. Thank you, Superintendent. I haven't really followed all of that as closely as I had previously, so I don't really fully know what a coordinated incident log refers to.
Yeah,
Sorry.
log of
That's
incidents.
exactly what I didn't understand.
Yeah.
It's a log.
So does that mean there's a particular incident that required the doors to be locked?
No, this is about just logging incidents. So for today, like for example, today we had 2 EMS calls, we had a fire in a bathroom, we had another medical emergency. So those incident logs are kept in different places, and we don't have a consistent protocol across the district to capture those. And then as we've been in conversation with the police department, the way they log the incident when they visit our campuses is not necessarily how we log the incident when it happens on our campus. So just trying to get coordinated and make sure that we have a clear and consistent and calibrated approach to gathering the information about the things that are happening around our campuses related to safety.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So then, the incidents that the PD logs, is it possible for there to be separate logs or separate, like things that you log that the police department wouldn't log?
Definitely. Yeah, they're going to continue to maintain their own log, and we'll continue to have our own log, but just so like when there's a mental health emergency, for example, and the Davis Police Department's doing a mental health assessment, making sure we're both calling it a mental health
Okay.
assessment,
Okay.
for example,
Right,
instead
so
of police department response, for example.
they'll only log the incidents that they were a part of?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, correct. We have many more incidents that happen, both critical and mundane over the course of any given day.
Okay. And then as far as the locking, I know that there's been a lot of conversations around locking. Is this, because I know when I was at Montgomery, if there's like intruder on campus or something that's happening in the vicinity, you do lock the doors at that.
Yeah, whenever there's an emergency.
What's the difference in the protocol?
There's 2 different protocols that are generally used. One that's more frequent is called the shelter in place. And that's generally what I would say the vast majority of our shelter in places are due to some sort of medical emergencies. We had one today where a student fell on the monkey bars and was injured. And we called EMS. They did a shelter in place on the campus so that the student had privacy and the EMS staff could respond to the emergency without having to wade through students on the playground. So that's an example of a shelter in place. Those also happen when there's like police activity in the neighborhood, that it's not a direct threat to the school, but there may be something happening where the police says, look, let's just keep everybody indoors right now. So that's the sort of spectrum of things for a shelter in place. A lockdown is where there's a concern about a threat to campus. It may be an aggravated community member or a parent. It may be an actual threat against the school, a bomb threat or a threat of violence against the school. Lockdowns are far more infrequent. And those are generally the 2 times where we're locking the doors and making sure they're secured.
Did that answer your question?
I think the other question, I think also what Gloria is getting at, and maybe I'm wrong, so, is that all the doors are locked, right? Like, they're locked, but they have a lock engaged. So there's a little piece of rubber, so the door is on that piece of rubber. So the doors are actually locked, but because the lock's engaged, students are able to have that freedom of coming in and out of the classroom. But as soon as there's a shelter in place or a lockdown, and the door automatically locks within seconds.
Sure, I guess what my question is, what is the conversation that's happening in the community around locking doors? Because from what I've gathered, people are asking for more security, or are they asking for the locks not to be in
Yeah, you
place?
want to take that, Joe?
I'm glad to start, but I think all my colleagues can respond. This has been an on-off topic for the 7 years I've been on the board. The most recent conversation, as Matt mentioned, was a series of 3 meetings. There are definitely members of the community that would like to see doors locked. Always, like always, fully locked. There are also members of the community that don't want them locked and are comfortable with the status quo. Similar conversations about fencing. We had 15, 20 public meetings. Laura led many of them. And Davis is very divided about this, equally passionate on the no fences, because that changes what Davis is, and we want more fences because we want perimeter fencing like many other communities have. So I think it's been a very, and all of us on the board have had dozens, maybe approaching hundreds of conversations with community members. I think the most important, the most recent piece of information we received at our last meeting was a survey that was done with staff. And overwhelmingly, staff would prefer not to have the doors permanently locked. So the current status of the handle is locked, but the lock is engaged. And their rationale was at the high school, 15 plus times a class, there are people coming in and out. Others felt we might have a disparate effect on students with disabilities who are often either having services come in or exiting the classroom for services. And I think I'm representing this appropriately, but others should join in if they don't agree. If we were going to take additional safety steps, there were other steps that were preferred by staff, including more campus supervision, perimeter fencing, I believe were the 2 that were most highly rated.
Okay.
So did you want to add anything?
I think the only thing I would add is, with that wide breadth of voices around this was also the conversation of what each campus has their own safety, Matt, give me the right words for it, that fall with safety process.
Like safety week?
The site safety plan.
Safety
Site
plan,
safety
school
plan,
site safety
thank you.
plan.
School site safety plan. And I think there was conversation around like, do we need to really look at those? I mean, we already look at them pretty carefully, but do we need to look at each school as their own unique ecosystem and what is needed for that campus? So that's another piece that was kind of brought up in conversation.
And part of why I brought up the incident log and making sure that we're capturing the kinds of incidents that are around safety is so that we can get clearer about the challenges that we're facing on a daily, weekly, yearly basis, and make sure that we're coordinated with our law enforcement and community partners to be clear about that, and then that helps us to address those problems in the future.
Is that completion of your report? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. The city is trying to talk about safety.
So my understanding is that there were 2 requests, 2 very different requests that related to safety. One is an update on homelessness. We may have some specific questions. And the other is just a follow-up from the picnic day incident last month, 2 months ago. Last month, whatever it was. So starting with homelessness, I did pass out a little card, it's all have, and gave some extras to Superintendent Best. We have, these cards are just easy little cards that if people have a concern or want to report something, it gives a QR code and gives some phone numbers and is an easy, quick way for folks to get to the right place with the city. So we have, as you may know, we have a social services department, and within that department we have a homeless outreach coordinator and then 2 what we call public safety specialists, folks who go out and are doing actually homeless outreach. That's some of our first points of contact with individuals often, and their responsibility and their role is to really try to go out to any encampment or talk to any person they believe to be unsheltered and see if they can get them connected with services, housing, shelter, any of those kinds of needs. So that's the approach that we've been trying to take. There obviously are other people other staff who are involved in our homeless activities, if folks come into contact with law enforcement or code enforcement, then those staff play a part in interacting with people who are unsheltered. Right now, we had some questions about the numbers of people and what happens, or are there trends, things like that going on. We have every year there's something called a pit count or a point in time count. The last one that, it's been in the winter, and we try to on one night count the number of unsheltered people and also people who are without permanent housing. So they might be in shelter, but they're not in a permanent housing situation. Our number is mid-100s, so 165 or so that were counted. We believe that's probably an undercount, that there's probably other people who just weren't located on that particular night, but it gives you an idea of the magnitude of just in Davis on any one night. In terms of trends and issues right now, we do see, talking with Dana Bailey, who's our Director of Social Services, she's saying right now we're seeing a lot of migration, so people who are either passing through maybe from the Bay Area going east, or maybe from the Sacramento area heading west, people who stop in Davis for some period of time. That's not necessarily new. That is fairly typical of what we've seen over a number of years. One of the things that we're really focusing on is trying to get people back to wherever their place of origin is. That's where their benefits would be, and that's where they can be connected best with services. So that's part of the homeless outreach efforts. Now, sometimes their place of origin is here, and those folks, we try to as well work with our social service providers locally, whether it's Davis Community Meals or Community Care, working with the county. There's many different, we're fortunate to have many different community-based groups that are assisting. So there aren't trends specific right now that are very different than what we've seen in the past. One of the other things that we do is our homeless outreach folks put together a little report every month, and it notes the different contacts that they've made and where they've made those contacts. We've started to separate it out by district, and there are contacts in every district. So it's not a problem that is specific to one particular area. Sometimes it is more visible in a certain area than in other areas. But we do have, we have folks who are living unsheltered across town. So I'll stop. Oh, actually, I'm going to add two more things. We have two little guides that we have available, and we can give them to Matt. One is a family resource services guide, just a collection of information we have that might be helpful to families who need social service assistance. And then the other is a health and social services guide, not specifically directed at families, but similar types of information. So with that, I'll stop. I don't know if there are particular questions or something specific that's weighing on your mind that you wanted to share.
Justin, do you have any questions? Yeah, sure. Yeah, I'm copying first. So I think part of why this came up was, Matt posed the question to the board at the beginning of our ARC and talking about potential changes to the locked door policy and security in general is what problem we're trying to solve. And obviously given the incident at Picnic Day, it raises sort of heightened awareness of the potential of a full shooting. And they're rare on schools, but not impossible. Right? More common in our campuses has been folks coming on campus who do not belong on campus during the day. And that happens in a variety of ways. Sometimes it's a dog chasing a ball at Willett. Sometimes it's somebody who doesn't realize they're walking through the middle of the campus. Sometimes it's someone who doesn't have housing who is coming across. And that in particular has been a challenge on and off at North Davis and Da Vinci Charter High School is sort of the two campuses that tend to have that challenge. And so part of why the question is raised is, have things fundamentally changed over the last 4 to 5 to 6 years from when we did a thorough review of safety and security and started on the path we're on now of strategic fencing, enhanced relationship with the police department, enhanced training of our staff, enhanced threat assessment, mental health services, and other things to progressively build up the robustness of our approach to this. So that's why I think the question was raised. And you may know there was an incident a few months ago at Da Vinci High School that was, I think, particularly upsetting to some. And so that's where that came
Kelly, do you mind if I add a little bit to that and sort of, yeah, because it's a really interesting question. There's a couple of things that I think we've all observed. About a year ago, when the Supreme Court decision, the Grants Pass decision came down, what we all saw throughout the city was that in a number of other cities, they were doing sweeps of homeless encampments, people were displaced, and they were coming to cities that seemed like potentially more hospitable cities. So back then, about, it's almost a year ago now, as Grants Pass, we were seeing a considerable influx of people who were new to our community, and it was definitely creating a lot of a burden on the system. Some of the people who came in realized that their benefits weren't easily transferred. And at the end of the day, with many of those individuals who kind of came in at that point have since moved on, many of them. I don't know the exact numbers, I'm sure David knows that. So there was that happening about a year ago. But then another pattern that you may also be observing is that, and this is also sort of an artifact of that decision, is that what a lot of the service providers are now telling individuals who are unsheltered is, don't stay in one place too long, don't form large encampments. You know, if you need to sleep somewhere, sleep there, be tidy, move on quickly. And you see, I see this a lot, and particularly because there are a lot of encampments in the district I represent, you see a lot of people moving about in the mornings with all their goods. You see it kind of back and forth. And I don't know if that's more, or I'm just noticing it more, but other people are commenting on it too. And particularly with respect to North Davis, why I live very close to that. And there are individuals who do stay in the parking lot there overnight. There are other individuals who sleep under the eaves of the library. Always, that's been the case for as long as I've lived in 25 years in that neighborhood. So there is a pattern that you see of people moving around a lot more during the day. And I've seen that as well, and I don't know if that's part of what you may be noticing. So the actual overall number of people who are unsheltered really hasn't gone up in any dramatic way over the recent years.
I guess one of the things that we can do is I can talk with Dana Bailey and make sure that our homeless outreach folks, when they're going out, that they stress the importance anytime they have a contact of staying off of school property. Obviously, particularly when the school's in session and when students are there, but just really making sure that people that they come in contact with are aware of that, because it may not be something that they're thinking about. And I would also note that we have, any number of locations across town that are sort of typical places for people to go if they're living unsheltered, and they, while they ebb and flow in terms of who's at what location, when the locations overall in the entire time I've been here also haven't changed very much. So they're often places that are slightly off the beaten path, but maybe still visible if you're in the right viewpoint. But they are also all across town. So north on F Street, north of town, along 2nd Street, by the railroad, over on 113 north of Marketplace. I mean, there's all these locations that they're not new, and it just differs time to time based on how many people are there.
Yeah, and so you may have a question, but I think it's helpful to hear that for us, so thank you for sharing that information, because the strategic fencing process over the last couple of years has been meant in large part for a number of our sites to address that. So in North Davis, putting fencing up along the shared parking lot with the Yolo County Library, and on the east side, similarly, toward F Street, so that really stops any folks coming from east to west, which is where most of the challenges are, folks coming from the library parking lot and coming in. And similarly at Willett, the fencing along Sycamore Park, from the fence that's already there for 113 all the way to the main campus, preventing incursion from folks coming off of that bike path who might walk into the play area of Willett, and the occasional dog owner that might decide that that's an attractive place to run their dog. And in the evenings, that's one thing, but when school's in session, maybe not so much. So it was really helpful to hear that it doesn't sound like the things that we're trying to address for strategic fencing, that things have changed to the point that we should rethink that. Trustee Moon, did you have a question from?
Yes, first of all, thank you. It's really good to have that information. For the people who are unhoused in Davis, have you seen an increase in mental health support needs compared to probably maybe 5 years ago, or like when I first came into Davis? You know what I mean? Like, has there been a substantial change in the amount of mental health supports needed?
It's difficult for me to say whether there's been a change. What I can say is that the vast majority of people that our folks come into contact with have mental health and or substance abuse challenges. So that is, and those are the folks who are living completely unsheltered, not necessarily people who are in a shelter like the sexual assault, domestic violence center or something like that. But I can certainly ask to see if there are any data in terms of increases for mental health issues, but the vast majority of people who they're encountering now do have those challenges.
If I could jump in, I think that that Kelly is correct. It's that's always been the case. But what there has been an increase of is senior citizens. It's the population of folks who are unhoused tends to be much older now.
Yeah, that is something that we've seen, somewhat surprising to us over the past few years, particularly at the city's respite center or Paul's Place. There are a number of people who are a lot older than you maybe expect.
Okay. Any other comments on this before we move to picnic day? Okay. Thank you for that.
So a different type of safety. So just a quick recap on picnic day. Our police department is still working hard on investigation. Obviously a very complex investigation, primarily because there were so many people who were out and about in the vicinity and in community park that day. But they're still working on that. So even though it's a month old, it's not forgotten. So as or if they have additional information, they'll be sharing that when if they can. At the same time, on a parallel track, city staff have been working both internally and then also starting conversations with the campus about what picnic day next year and going into the future should look like. We're trying to internally assess some of our processes and protocols to make sure that we are able to manage the activities that go on in the community, so off campus in the community on picnic day. Trying to get all of our permitting protocols in place and make sure that we all know, all of our different departments know what the rules are. And then talking with campus about what are things that we can do jointly, whether it's messaging or other changes to the way picnic day unfolds, that would help make it a safer day for everybody. So we have a separate subcommittee with the council on that. They've met with the campus and with staff, and so we've started those conversations, many more to come, but we are trying to make sure that we certainly don't want to have anything like what we had happen this past year happen again, we may look at something quite different next year where we really tamp down on any activity in parks or open spaces on picnic day, or have other changes, as I said, to some of the activities related to picnic day going forward.
Thank you. Questions or comments?
Yeah, just thank you for that update, and, I was at picnic day this year, and I felt like there was less drinking than there has been in the past, at least on the main campus. I don't know what it looked like in
My
the community.
It migrated.
Migrated.
So what we've seen, there's picnic day on campus. It's a lovely, wonderful event. There's picnic day in the city. It's a very different event. I would not say that picnic day in the city this year was less eventful, the community park episode aside certainly, but definitely a lot of individuals who started drinking early and drank all day. What is different with picnic day now as compared to maybe 10 years ago is that the downtown is not the war zone that it was. That's a plus. The downside is that that activity has migrated to all kinds of pop-up activities that happen in parks, open spaces, private residences all across town. And those have been much harder to try to manage because they get big and they get big fast, and we're kind of chasing our tail and trying to manage them or deal with them. So that part, that's what we're really trying to work through and figure out a better way to try to manage it before it gets too large. So.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I appreciate what a difficult challenge it is, and I think, it's a wonderful event for our community, it brings people in for our businesses. I think we all, see the positive sides, but one anecdote, Liz and I walk every morning from our house by Cesar Chavez School to downtown and back, and that morning we were at, which we typically are around 6:30, and we counted 15 parties in our 3-mile walk at 6:30 in the morning. I know my colleague, Councilmember Partida, has heard the same 6 before 6 contest that was publicized fairly aggressively. And then a little pop-up party right here in Civic Park, which went from 5 people to, while we were walking down B Street, to about 250 people in just boom. And, it's part of the world we live in, I completely understand that, but I think, as I'm sure you all can appreciate it, we all want to live in a safe community, we want to celebrate the university. I think it hit us home really hard. One of our students was one of the people that were shot and injured, and fortunately he's going to be okay, and it was, there was, that part of it's fortunate. They happened to be, friends of our family, and just, it wasn't hard to imagine what it was like being a parent in that moment because we were with the parents and it was really hard. And so, and not telling you anything I don't know, but I think it's part of why it's hit us, because of course then, we had to actually go into not a shelter in place, but a lockdown at our campuses by Community Park. And it's just, and we've had, I know it's been the same thing, any number of parents who have had a conversation with us about it. So I know the city is, it's, and I'm sure the police department is diligent on this, but I think it's important for us to communicate it's really more than maybe some other incidences really hit home with our school community.
Yeah, we are grateful that it wasn't worse than it was. It could have been much worse. That said, nobody should be scared to be in a park in Davis, period, ever. And this was not acceptable, and we need to do everything we can to make sure it doesn't happen again. It will be a challenge to find the right balance of to make sure that we're honoring everybody's concerns.
I know members of the public, were you interested in making a public comment on this item?
Yes.
Okay. I I don't actually know what our rules are, our protocols on duration of time, because the city has a 2-minute comment period and we have a 3-minute period. So are you amenable if we split the difference and make it 2 minutes and 30 seconds? Okay, all right. So I will be your timer. And if we end up with some sort of Brown Act violation, they can blame me for it. Okay, wherever you're ready.
Great, hi, thank you. I'm Jamie, I'm the parent of a student at Cesar Chavez, and I've been in a lot of these safety conversations recently. So in advance of last week's Board of Education meeting, Jessica and I conducted a survey of other parents to complement the staff survey, which received responses from 95 parents across 14 schools in the district. And the high-level takeaway is that the vast majority of parents support updated school safety measures. Additionally, dozens of parents have been attending board meetings, sending emails to board members, expressing their concerns about the lack of safety measures at the DJUSD schools. I think the Yolo County's grand jury report has been unsettling as well to us parents, especially given its front page positioning in the SACB, which makes me concerned personally. It advertises the vulnerability of our schools to everybody reading it. And yet, with all of this, the board has not decided to take any immediate action on safety and voted unanimously against door locking at last week's meeting, as you heard. And so a question Superintendent Best keeps asking, and I heard Trustee D'Annunzio say today, is what has changed in Davis and why would we change safety measures now? And so 2 things in response. One, I guess I'm not really sure it's necessary to make the case given that the world has changed around us. Also, the majority of local school districts have stronger safety measures in place than we do. That came from the board's own reporting. Same things goes for Bay Area schools. We're just out of alignment with many common practices recommended by the FBI, the Sandy Hook Advisory Commission, the US DOJ, and the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency. So that's my first response, but if you do think that we need a justification, I would say 3 things. One, as we all know, the community park shooting recently, the serial killer in 2023, these incidents happened here, even though none of us thought they ever could. 2, the Yolo County grand jury report identified challenges in school safety in Davis.
You have 30 seconds.
Thank you. And then 3, the number of school shootings has risen significantly in recent years. I wanted to look this up after Superintendent's Best question. In 2010, there were only 18 school shootings. In 2017, only 59, and 330 in 2024. Yes, these are rare, but they're catastrophic, not only for those that lose their lives, but for the mental health, the community health, everything that supports it. And the very last thing I'll say is that good public schools have been a reason why many of us came here, myself included. But, okay, thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
Hi, Mark. My name is Jessica Huer, and I'm a parent of a North Davis Elementary School student who's in 2nd grade. And I'll actually just wrap up Jamie's comment. So one of the reasons why my family came and many families came here is that we felt this was a safe community. We wanted to raise our kids here, just like many of us, of you before us. And really, since our kids have started school, it has not been that for us. And it's also been discussed many times about how parents of older kids feel maybe like they're adjusted to this or they've been experiencing this for a long time. But I would argue, no, that's actually not the case. Our kids are not comparable to any other school district that I've experienced, whether that's through friends or family. My nephew has had 1 shelter in place in his school, period. And it was because there was a neighborhood incident. Our kids have gone through bomb threats, actual rocks going through a classroom window, which resulted in boarding up of campuses, which could have been solved by fencing, we started advocating for this over a year ago. That was 1 incident. We have, as was mentioned, unhoused community walking through campus, people with issues that we don't understand, leaving things like propane tanks on campus for days and days in playgrounds. We have had, obviously, a serial killer. That's a one-off issue, but these day-to-day incidents that are kind of fuzzily recorded, as was mentioned by police and district, we don't have good reporting. We need to align with the rest of the country, the state, the rest of our county. We do not have the same security that schools 10 miles away have.
You have 30 seconds.
Thank you. I just want to quickly go through some of the data points. This was a very small survey, but it's continuing. We have almost 100 respondents now. 89% say that they want perimeter fencing around schools. And I think that aligns with what our other staff and teachers have said as their top priority. I think we can find common ground. We really urge you to fence fully the schools at this point. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. And just one point of clarification from my colleagues in the dais. There was never a vote on blocking. No motion was ever made. Oh, that's okay. Not meant to be criticism of you, just for parliamentary purposes. No motion was made. Okay, so we'll move on now to item 5B, development project updates, and Superintendent Benson.
Yeah, a couple of things. We're continuing our road tour around housing and schools connection. We had our 51st presentation at noontime, and I've got one right after this. I think we've got 20-something left before the end of the school year. It's been a great conversation around the community, raising lots of awareness around the housing schools connection. Related to housing, and Trustee D'Annunzio can maybe talk a little more about this as well. We just completed our cohort as part of this California School Boards Association Workforce Housing Initiative, and are likely to bring a presentation to the board in early August, sort of outlining potential possibilities and taking our next steps to develop one of our properties for workforce housing. So anything you want to add, Joe, on that topic?
Yeah, I know we're short on time, so I'll just be brief, but I'm glad to address any questions. So this has been a focus for the last 2.5 years now. I think the participation in this cohort really accelerated, seeing other communities that have built these in San Francisco and Daly City and Los Angeles. I think we are well positioned now. We had a very early, I would call it what's called a pre-feasibility study, and we're going to move to a feasibility study now. So by the time we meet in August, I think we're going to have a very well thought out next step. Probably the biggest steps that we need to take will be getting board agreement that we want to move from this is a priority to we're going to act, and then address issues around particularly funds associated with building it. But there's no question, based on staff surveys, staff want this. The communities that have done it have been, by and large, very, very successful. Jefferson Unified, for example, 22% of their staff are housed in housing. And instead of spending $4,500 to $5,000 a month for a 2-bedroom, they're spending $2,000, $2,200, and so they can actually afford to live in what are very nicely designed, thoughtful facilities. I'll stop there.
Just make one comment. So thank you for that. And you mentioned the road show that you have been doing, and I know you and Maria have, I don't know, you told us the number of venues you're doing it in. It's what?
It'll be close to 80, I think.
I
before
thought
the
it was
year's
about
out.
80 something. And I hate to add to your workload, it's just a suggestion,
81!
Yeah, it's 81. We, at our fairly recent council meeting, had a discussion about whether we should be amending Measure D. And if so, when? And we didn't get into a lot of substance. Just based on some of the comments and the things we heard there, I'm just hopeful that you are reaching out to the senior community, even though they don't have school-age children. We frequently hear from them about what their views are on more housing in Davis, and I think they might be very interested in what you have to say.
Yeah, we've hit almost every service club in town, and I think we've got a presentation at URC. I think it's in the fall. We have been reaching out and have lots of folks that will be at a presentation. Will be like, oh hey, can you come talk with this group or that group? So, and if you have specific folks I should reach out to, definitely let me know. I'm happy to connect.
He's hoping to get 100, so if you could be helpful to him, the Councilmember Neville would be
Hope
great.
is a strong word.
All right, City Manager Stakowitz, development project updates from the city.
So there are 3 projects that are in various stages of actual construction or pre-construction. Breton Woods, which probably does not feed into the district too much, it's mostly 55 plus. Child's Ranch over by the cemetery, which is finally getting underway. And then also Palomino, which is still in a more preliminary stage, but will happen soon enough. Then there are 2 projects that are, as you know, applications before the city, 2 very large projects. One is the proposed Village Farms Davis, about 1,800 units proposed. And then the other is Willow Grove on the other side of the Palomino project with about 1,200, 1,300 units. So both of those projects, as you know, they're in the development application process. Vice Mayor Neville sits on one subcommittee for one of the groups, and then Councilmember Partida on the other. Neither of those, there's been a lot of conversation about when those go forward for Measure J, R, or D, depending on how you want to call it, vote. We are working through both the applications, and when they are ready to come forward to Planning Commission and Council, at that point, it will be, that will tell us when they're going to go. Right now, Village Farms Davis is expecting or planning on going in June of 26, and Willow Grove in November of 26. Again, those are both estimates, and those could change around depending on progress. But that's what we're looking at. I know there was some disappointment and frustration that they couldn't go faster, but they could go as fast as we were able to process them. There will not be anything on the ballot for this coming November. So I don't know if either of the council members want to weigh in on either of the projects that they're participating in.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from you, Justin?
Not this one, I'll let you go first if you have a question.
No, I do not. I feel very up to date. Thank you for that. But we can give you a moment if you do have a question.
No, it's okay, we can move.
Okay, all right, then let's move on to, just make sure you don't public comment on 5B, is that correct? Okay, yeah. So let's move on to 5C, construction project updates, and we'll start back with the district.
Yeah, another busy summer around our district. We have our second phase, which is our final phase of technology infrastructure improvements at the remaining, I think it's 4 or 5 sites this summer. So those sites will have periodic outages for internet services. Several roof repairs and replacements. I think North Davis and Holmes are the big ones. The Aquatic Center is the sort of completion of the largest set of construction projects that we have this summer. We're expecting it'll be full of water in July. And the probably most disruptive part to the campus will be a significant sewer line improvement. Most of that stadium parking lot, the whole entire parking lot will be offline for the better part of the summer as those a whole array of sewer lines around that area are improved. And working with city staff currently about getting gym utilization since path of travel will be challenging and we'll need to have portable restrooms for a significant portion of the summer work happening there. And other than that, we've got some other small projects in and out around the district. We are finalizing a tree management plan similar to what the city has put into place. We did an assessment a couple of years ago and have started to address some problematic trees. We removed a cluster of, I think, 7 at Holmes this past week that were quite concerning after the windstorm. And so just continuing to do that maintenance and assessment of trees over the course of the year. And that's really the big stuff at Davis Training Five this summer.
Any comments or questions? Okay, seeing none. City.
So in terms of construction projects that affect schools or are in the vicinity of schools, we do have our traffic signal improvement project coming up. I think it's going to be awarded soon. And we try to do most of our work in the summer, so I don't know that it will actually directly affect schools while they're in session, but there are 8 different locations across town that have, that will be doing work on the intersections and the traffic signals. I think the one that's probably most directly adjacent to a school would be over by Emerson. But there are, there's a map of the 8 locations, and I'm happy to share that with Superintendent Best. I believe that our staff and school staff have been communicating about this as well. We have some pavement work that we'll be doing in Village Homes in West Davis in late July, and I believe we've asked the school district for the ability for residents to park in the Emerson parking lot while they, during the times they can't access the streets or the roads there while the work is being done. Then the only other thing is work that's happening with electrical work, et cetera, that's happening in Community Park in the shade structure area. So beyond that, I don't think there's anything else to add.
Thank you. Comments or questions, colleagues? Okay, seeing none, we'll move to item 6, which is announcements and comments. So we'll start with staff first. Any announcements or comments?
Nothing new for me.
Laura, you've been awfully quiet. Associate Superintendent Juanitas, you must have some comment.
No, I think I'm just fine.
Indeed. Okay. Well, first then I will turn to my colleagues from City Council for announcements or comments. No? All right. The only thing I will say is we've got a bevy of graduations coming up. So congratulations to the many students that will be graduating from adult education, from King High, from the Davis School for Independent Study, from Da Vinci Charter Academy, from Davis Senior High School.
And our teacher preparation programs.
And from our induction teacher preparation programs. So we're going to have lots. I want to make sure, Superintendent Best, that we extended our invitation to all of the graduations to our colleagues on City Council. They're always fun, right? I mean, they're always just a great celebration. Every single one of them, they're all different. It's sometimes it feels a little bit like a gauntlet going through them over the 2 weeks, but they're pretty awesome. They're pretty fantastic. And I do have one request from the city, City Manager Stakowitz. On June 13th, if you could keep the temperature below 90 degrees for the afternoon and evening times, we would much appreciate that.
I will make sure to put somebody in charge of weather, absolutely. And as a parent of a 2020 graduate, I'm always envious of the graduations. So it's nice to be able to celebrate them.
Yeah, it is. Okay. Any final comments or questions? All right, seeing none. Our next meeting will be August 20th, 2025. I believe we'll be right back here in Chambers. And we are